Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 8 true, disturbing stories about the Appalachian Mountains. You'll hear about the solo hiker who woke up to deliberate footsteps and a shadow that hummed outside his tent, and the cousin who disappeared into the woods only to return days later with dead eyes and a warning no one should ignore. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, share this with your friends, and let me know where you're watching from. Thanks. Now let's get into it. This happened 2 years ago. I was 32, just getting over a long breakup that left me feeling kind of untethered. I didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to hear the usual, "you'll be okay" stuff. I just wanted to disappear for a bit. No phone, no texts, just quiet. I figured a few days alone in the woods might help me reset. I picked a 3-day loop on the Appalachian Trail, somewhere in North Carolina. Not too remote, not super rugged. I'd done weekend hikes before, mostly with friends. This would be my first real solo trip. But I wasn't nervous. I had a decent map, enough food, a good tent, and I was in shape. I parked my car next to this faded old ranger station on a Friday morning. It looked abandoned, but there was a logbook out front and some dusty trail maps in a locked box. I filled in my first name and the date, which I thought was more than enough at the time. I didn't leave a detailed itinerary. I just told my roommate I was doing some section of the App Trail back by Sunday night. That was literally it. I didn't even name the loop. I know how dumb that sounds now. The hike started off exactly how I hoped. Long stretches of silence, the kind that actually feels good. Just me, the trees, and the sound of my boots crunching dirt. I passed a couple heading south early that afternoon. They looked like through hikers, sunburnt and cheerful. We nodded and kept moving. Later on, I saw a bear through the trees down a steep slope, maybe 30 yards away. It didn't see me, and I didn't stop walking. By the time I got to my first campsite, it was close to dusk. I didn't stay on the main path. I went about 50 feet off trail and found a flat spot with a few good trees nearby. I wanted to follow the leave no trace guidelines. I didn't build a fire, just set up my tent, heated up one of those rice and bean pouches on my camp stove, and ate sitting on a log. I had a paperback in my pack and a little solar lantern. I think I made it through about 10 pages before I couldn't keep my eyes open. Sometime around 2 in the morning, I woke up fast. No dream, no confusion, just that immediate, heart-pounding kind of wake-up. Something was walking around my tent. I went perfectly still. You know how when you're camping, you can usually tell if it's a deer or a raccoon? You hear twigs snapping or leaves rustling? This wasn't that. These were clear, solid steps. Slow, deliberate, heavy. They circled once, then stopped right at the tent door. I could see legs, just a pair, standing there. I couldn't make out anything else, just the outline against the nylon. I whispered, "Hello?" Nothing, no movement. No reply. Just silence. I waited, maybe 30 seconds, maybe longer. It felt endless. Then I slowly reached for the zipper, keeping my other hand on the hatchet I always bring for camp tasks. I poked my head out, shining my light straight ahead. Nobody. I swept the light in every direction. Still nothing. No crunching leaves, no footsteps retreating, no movement at all. I even checked the dirt around my tent in the beam of my headlamp. No prints. I sat outside for over an hour, back against a tree, hatchet in my lap, light on. I didn't hear anything else. Around 4, I climbed back into the tent, but I didn't sleep again. At first light, I packed up fast. Didn't even heat water for breakfast. I just shoved everything in my pack and started moving. I kept telling myself, maybe I dreamed it, maybe it was some sleep paralysis thing. But I knew better. That kind of fear doesn't come from nothing. Around noon, I found something just off the path that made me stop cold. It was this arrangement. Like a circle of stones, but not a fire pit. There were no ashes or charred wood. Inside the circle, someone had placed a bundle of feathers, gray and black, tied together with red twine. It looked like it had been made carefully, not something that just fell out of someone's pack. I didn't touch it. I didn't even get that close, just looked at it for maybe a minute, then turned and kept walking. Later that afternoon, I noticed how quiet everything had gotten. It was subtle at first, but the more I paid attention, the more I realized there were no birds, no wind, just this weird stillness. I kept glancing over my shoulder, like I expected something to be there. Nothing was, but the feeling stuck with me. That night, I set up camp on a ridge. I wanted visibility, something that made me feel like I had the high ground. I made a small fire this time, not because I was cold, but because I didn't want to sit in the dark again. I stayed up later, sat by the fire, listening. I didn't hear anything weird. I almost let myself relax. But around midnight, I heard humming, a low, tuneless voice. A man's voice, for sure, humming something slow without any rhythm. It came from the woods downhill. I froze. Then it stopped. Then I heard it again, closer this time. From behind my tent, I stayed perfectly still. I didn't unzip anything. I didn't make a sound. The humming got louder, slower. I swear I could feel it through the tent walls, like whoever it was had leaned against the fabric. I couldn't take it anymore. I burst out of the tent, yelling, swinging the hatchet, shining my light in every direction. Nothing. Just my gear, the trees, the fire burning low. No one there. But my boots were gone. I had left them in the vestibule, right under the flap. One of them I found about 50 feet away, shoved into the mud. The other, just gone. I panicked. I didn't even care about sleep anymore. I spent an hour crawling through the dark with my light, whispering, looking under logs, between rocks. Nothing. At first light, I wrapped duct tape around my socks and started walking. No destination, just away. A few miles later, I found this emergency supply post. Inside were a pair of rubber gloves, a rain poncho, and some size 13 hiking boots. I wear a 10, but I crammed my feet into them anyway. They rubbed like hell, but I kept walking. I left everything behind. Tent, stove, even the book. Just my water bottle and the boots. That last day, I felt like I was being followed the entire time. I started marking trees with chalk, just little slashes so I could tell if I was walking in circles. But every time I checked back, some of the marks had vanished. Later in the day, I came across another feather bundle. Same colors, same red twine. This one was laid out perfectly across a moss-covered rock. The twine looked damp, like someone had just placed it there. I didn't stop. A few hours later, I saw someone. A man standing up the hill, half behind a tree, thin, wearing dark clothes. I couldn't see a face, just the outline. He didn't move, didn't react when I looked right at him. I stepped off the trail, down the hill. He didn't follow, but I could feel him watching. That humming started again, fainter, but still there. I ran. Eventually, I saw a sign. Service, access, 0.6 mi. I didn't think twice. I followed it. The trail was rough and narrow, almost like it hadn't been used in years. But after a while, I came across this little wooden building. A shack, maybe a shed, up on cinder blocks. Door half closed, chained, but not locked. I pushed it open and went inside. There was nothing in there except old shelves, some empty cans, and a metal stool. I looped a carabiner through the inside latch and sat on the floor, hatchet across my lap. Around dusk, the footsteps came, slow, deliberate, right onto the porch, then they stopped at the door. Then the humming started again. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then I heard someone circling the building. Lighter footsteps this time, faster. Scratching along the walls. A different voice, raspy, higher. Whispers I couldn't understand. I stayed like that until sunrise. When I finally opened the door, there was no one. But on the outer wall, scratched in deep lines, was the word, hello. I followed the service trail until it met a gravel road. Eventually, a guy in a pickup truck hauling lumber pulled over. He barely asked questions. I think he could tell I wasn't in the mood. When I got to the ranger station and explained what happened, the rangers didn't even look surprised. One of them just nodded when I mentioned the humming. "You're not the first," he said. I asked him what that meant. He wouldn't tell me. They filed a report, called it an unconfirmed disturbance, handed me a bottle of water and pointed me toward the lot where my car was. I drove home barefoot with blisters and didn't stop once. I haven't hiked since. My name's Jordan. I was 17 the summer this happened. My cousin Marcus was 19, and honestly, he was the closest thing I had to a brother. We grew up 4 blocks apart in a small town called Elwood Grove, just outside Spencer's Mill. Every summer, from the time I was about 10 and could keep up, we'd pick trails and head out into the woods. Never used maps, never tracked anything on our phones. Marcus had this weird philosophy that if you were quiet enough, the mountain would just guide you. You listen long enough, he'd say, it'll tell you where to go. That kind of thing usually came right after he lit a campfire with a single match and a smirk. That particular summer, he texted me on a Tuesday morning, just 3 words, Crooked Pine Loop. Noon, snacks. That was it. I pulled into the gravel lot around 11:45. The place was practically deserted, just one old beat-up Dodge pickup parked off to the side. I didn't recognize it. Definitely not Marcus's truck. He drove an old black Silverado with a dented tailgate and a sticker that said "Eat Dirt" on the bumper. I waited, casually scrolling through my phone. By 12:30, I'd walked around the lot twice. By 1:15, I figured he'd blown me off or decided to hike solo without telling me. Wouldn't have been the first time. Marcus wasn't exactly predictable. Then, at 1:35, his truck rolled in. It moved weirdly slow, like someone was trying not to wake a baby in the back. He pulled into the far corner near the tree line, and then nothing. No door opened, no engine noise after the initial stop. Just sat there, idling for a moment, then went quiet. I jogged over. The driver's seat was empty. I knocked on the window, half expecting him to pop up and shout "boo" or something, but the cab was completely empty. The keys weren't in the ignition. The seat was pushed all the way back, like someone had been lying down in it. But there was nothing else. No half-empty water bottles, no snack wrappers, no hoodie tossed in the backseat like he usually left it. Just clean, sterile emptiness. And I don't mean it looked freshly vacuumed, I mean it looked like it had never been driven. It reminded me of a display model. I walked around the truck a couple more times, calling his name, half laughing to myself like maybe this was a setup. He did love messing with me. Still, I figured he'd just headed down the trail and forgot to text me, or wanted to mess with my head a little, so I headed in. The entrance to Crooked Pine starts out wide, flat, and kind of welcoming. But the deeper you go, the more the trail narrows. It turns into this tight, winding path where the trees press in on either side. You get to know it after a few trips. I knew the spots where the roots stick up like ropes waiting to trip you, or where the rocks jut out just enough to catch your toe. That loop, we'd done it probably 24 times. I could have walked it blindfolded. About 40 minutes in, though, I started noticing the silence. No birds, no squirrels, not even the usual whine of mosquitoes. Just nothing. Like someone had turned the forest on mute. I stopped walking at one point, just to be sure. Held my breath and listened. Dead quiet. The only sound was the faint crunch of my boots on the trail. Then I saw the hoodie, Marcus's red flannel hoodie. He wore that thing everywhere, even when it was stupid hot outside. Said it was his trail armor. It was hanging from a branch about shoulder height, both sleeves limp like it had been carefully laid there. It wasn't tossed, that was the first thing that hit me. It was too neat. I walked up and took it down. The fabric was damp, heavy. When I lifted the sleeves, I saw they were stiff, crusted with something dark and flaky. My stomach turned. I didn't need to be a detective to know what it probably was. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the trees. I called his name once, softly. No answer, not even an echo. But I kept going. I don't really know why. Maybe I thought I'd find him around the next bend, Or maybe I didn't want to go back through that silence alone. About 10 minutes later, I saw the knife, stuck right into the side of a tree, blade out, perfectly level. It was his grandfather's knife. Marcus loved that thing, wouldn't even let me touch it when we were kids. "It's not a toy," he used to say. Seeing it jammed into a tree like a lost souvenir made my chest feel tight. I didn't touch it. I just stood there, staring. Then I heard the breathing. At first I thought it was mine, but it wasn't. It didn't match my rhythm. It was slow, wet, like someone struggling to breathe through a clogged straw. I froze, crouched behind a cluster of low bushes, trying to figure out where it was coming from. And that's when I saw it. It was standing maybe 20 yards ahead, partly hidden between two trees. At first glance, it looked like a tall, emaciated deer, standing upright. But then it shifted. Its arms were way too long, like arms dragging along, the ground long. The ground was hunched, shoulders poking out under patchy fur. The skin underneath looked grayish, like old meat left out too long. Its head tilted to the side like it was listening for something, or someone, and its face there weren't eyes. Just two deep, black hollows, where eyes should have been. It didn't move, neither did I. I don't know how long we stared at each other. Then, all at once, its head gave this weird twitch, and it stepped toward me. That was it. I ran harder than I've ever run in my life. I wasn't thinking about where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. I tore through branches, scraped my arms, tripped once, and nearly went face first into a rock. Got back up and kept going. When I burst out onto the trailhead, I nearly collapsed. The lot was empty. His truck was gone. I stopped in my tracks, bent over, gasping, scanning the gravel like maybe it was just parked somewhere else and I'd missed it. But no, it was gone. No engine noise, no dust trail, no tire marks, nothing. I jumped into my car and drove straight to his house. His mom opened the door, looking surprised. I asked if Marcus was home. She looked confused. Said she thought he was with me. Hadn't seen him since Monday. I didn't tell her what I saw. I just said we got separated on the trail. She nodded like that wasn't surprising. I went home, locked every door in the house, and sat in my closet with a bat across my lap the entire night. 3 days passed, and then, just after sunrise on Friday, I saw him. He came walking down our gravel driveway, barefoot, shirtless, filthy. His skin looked sunburned and scratched, hair wild. His eyes were open wide and red, like he hadn't blinked in hours. My mom screamed when she saw him. I ran outside, calling his name. He didn't respond. He didn't even look at me. We got him to the hospital. He didn't fight us, just followed along like he was sleepwalking. The nurses said he was severely dehydrated, covered in cuts and welts. His feet were a mess, bleeding, raw, like he'd walked 50 miles without stopping. They kept him for observation, ran tests, said he was in shock. Psych ward took over after that. When he finally spoke, it was bits and pieces, broken sentences. Don't look at it. It's not a deer. They don't blink. I waited until we were alone, sat down next to his bed. I asked him about the knife, the hoodie, the thing I saw in the trees. He looked at me for a long time, then whispered, "You didn't see it." I said I did. He shook his head. "If you saw it, it'd follow you back." I asked him what that meant. He wouldn't answer. Wouldn't even make eye contact after that. 2 days later, he was gone. Disappeared from his hospital room in the middle of the night. No sign of forced entry. His shoes were still under the bed. Hospital bracelet still on the nightstand. Security cameras didn't catch anything. No one saw him leave. I was 34 when I went up to clear out my uncle's old cabin near Black Pine Ridge. He didn't leave a will, and nobody had set foot on the property since the late 80s. It had just been sitting there, tucked away in the woods, slowly sinking into itself. The family didn't want anything to do with it, so I figured, why not? Took a week off work, loaded the truck with some basic supplies, cooler, toolbox, sleeping bag, and headed out. I hadn't been up that way since I was a kid, probably 8 or 9. I remember the trees being taller. That's about it. The cabin was about 3 miles off Route 17. No paved road, no address marker, just a gravel path that looked more like a washed-out hiking trail. I had to fold my side mirrors in just to keep the truck from scraping the trees. The whole drive up, I kept wondering if the place would even still be standing, but when I finally broke through the tree line and saw the roof poking out behind a mess of pine branches, it looked okay, considering the porch was covered in a thick layer of pine needles, like the trees had been trying to bury the place slowly. One of the shutters had broken loose and was just banging lazily in the breeze. I half expected the front door to be stuck or boarded up, but it opened on the first try. No resistance, no creak, just swung open like someone had oiled the hinges yesterday. The smell hit me first, musty, stale, like a library mixed with an attic. Dust, paper, wood rot, every surface had that soft gray film on it. I spent most of that first afternoon sweeping out mouse droppings, dead bugs, a couple of bird skeletons in the fireplace. I swapped out the locks, not because I thought anyone would come up here, but because the old ones didn't really work anymore. Surprisingly, the generator was still intact. I topped it off with some fuel, gave the cord a few pulls, and it chugged to life like it had just been waiting. I left the fridge unplugged. I didn't trust it not to spark and start a fire. But the overhead lights came on, and for a second, the place felt almost livable. Behind the cabin, there was a trail my uncle used to take hunting. He had always said to stay near the main path. When I was a kid, I thought it was just so I wouldn't get lost. As I got older, I started to hear things from the locals. Warnings mostly. Stuff like, don't go past the red marker, or stay where the path stays wide. One guy in town told me there were sinkholes out there, and maybe old bear traps, rusted out and hidden under leaves. But no one ever told me exactly what had happened. It was all vague, like the kind of stuff you repeat just because someone told it to you once. I stayed close the first 2 days, fixed the busted water line that ran from the pump out back, cleared out a small landslide that had buried the side steps, got the porch halfway usable again. I played some of the old cassette tapes I found in the kitchen, just static on most of them, no labels. Couple had faint voices like someone mumbling or maybe singing, but it was too warped to make out. I should have thrown them out, but I didn't. I don't know why. By the third day, I needed to stretch my legs. Cabin fever, maybe. Or maybe it was something else. I'd been thinking a lot about my uncle, why he never left that mountain, why the place felt like it had been frozen in time. I'd also noticed a bunch of little stick figures behind the outhouse, like someone had twisted branches into crude shapes and jammed them into the dirt. Not toys, not art, just there. I grabbed my knife, slipped it in my pocket, and headed down the trail. Told myself it was just a walk. Nothing weird, just get some air. Trail narrowed quicker than I expected. The trees leaned in real low, and the canopy got so thick I could barely tell what time it was. After about half a mile, the path started twisting in weird ways, like it had been designed to get you turned around. That's when I saw the stuff nailed to trees. Bones. Some small, some too big to be anything I could name, tied with bits of red string. Tiny cloth pouches that smelled like ash and burnt leaves. I paused for a while, trying to figure out if it was art or a warning. Either way, I started feeling like I shouldn't be there. Then I found the shack. It wasn't on any map, not even the old topographical ones I found in a drawer. It looked slapped together. Uneven slats, a door that sagged so low I had to duck. I stepped inside. The floor creaked once, then held. There was a cot in the corner with a rusted metal frame and something that might have been a blanket fused to it. A tin stove half collapsed. And on one whole wall, carvings, hundreds of them, jagged symbols cut right into the wood. Some looked like distorted crosses, others like wheels with finger-like spokes. A few had been scratched out, deeply, like someone had been trying to erase them. I took a photo with my phone, no real reason, just instinct. I didn't stay long. Something about the place made my teeth feel tight. I backed out, turned around, and kept my pace steady. Fast, but not running. Checked over my shoulder every 10 steps. Nothing followed. Not that I could see. Got back before sundown, locked the door, cracked open a beer and sat on the porch like nothing happened. Later that night, I pulled out my phone to look at the photo. The screen stuttered, froze, the image glitched, flickered, then moved. I swear, just for a second, the carvings on the wall shifted, like a video. Then the phone shut off. Dead. The battery was at 90%. At around 2 a.m., I woke up to a sound. 3 knocks. Pause. Then 3 more. It came from the window, maybe 2 feet from where I was lying. I sat up. Waited. 3 more knocks. I didn't get up. Just reached for the broom, used the handle to push the curtain aside. Nothing there. I went outside, checked the ground. No footprints, no broken branches. Not even a smudge. I locked every window, blocked the front door with the dresser. Didn't sleep again. Next morning I tried to leave. Opened the door, stepped outside, and stopped. The trail was gone. Trees had moved, or the path had. The brush was higher than it had been yesterday. Whole forest felt rearranged. I picked a direction and started walking straight. Marked trees with my knife every 10 paces. After an hour, I found myself back at the cabin. No idea how. Checked my watch, 7:13. Tapped it, nothing. Still 7:13. 5th tree I marked had a carving already there. Same symbol from the shack. I didn't make it. Didn't even have time to process it. Just turned and walked fast. On the way back, I found a rabbit. It was lying on its side, clean cut down the belly. No blood, no guts, just the same triangle symbol carved into the skin. I ran. The eye was darker than it should have been when I reached the cabin. My watch still said 7:13:30 on. I slammed the door, nailed the windows shut with the broken dresser, and sat in the corner with the fire poker in my hand. At midnight, the knocking started again. This time, it was the door. Slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't breathe. Then a voice. Dry, hoarse, like it had been trying to speak for the first time in years. I froze. It said my name again. Same voice, same rasp. And then it didn't stop, just kept saying my name, over and over. Sometimes it sounded normal, sometimes slow, sometimes too fast. Some versions sounded like my uncle. One sounded like my voice, like a bad recording. Kept going for hours. Didn't pause, didn't change tone anymore, just repeated over and over. When light started coming in through the cracks, I passed out. Woke up on the floor, looked out the window, trail was back, trees looked normal. I didn't ask questions, just grabbed my stuff and left. Didn't stop walking for 3 hours, hit the road, truck was there, got in, drove down without looking back. Back home, I tried showing the picture to someone. Opened the photo app. It crashed. Phone rebooted, file was gone. Every time I turn on that phone now, the clock blinks 7:13 for 1 second before it updates. That was 5 months ago. I still get voicemails, no caller ID, just static. Then 3 soft knocks. I've changed phones, numbers, doesn't matter. I never told anyone where the shack was. I was 15 the first time I stayed home alone in Copper Ridge. That night, my parents had to rush out because my Aunt Linda in Ashford broke her hip. Mom was set on not letting her go into surgery alone, and our usual babysitters were already booked. I told them I was fine. I was practically grown up. No little kid games, and honestly, I sort of relished the thought of having the whole house to myself. No chores, no lectures, just me, our dog Riley, and whatever junky movies I could find. They left around lunchtime. I stood on the porch, waving as Dad's truck rolled down the gravel drive, dust kicking into the late afternoon sun like a lazy golden haze. Then it was just me and Riley. Riley's a mutt. Some lab in there, some who knows what else. He gets these massive ears that flop every time he sneezes in that weird way dogs do. He follows me everywhere like I'll vanish otherwise. Tail wagging even when nothing's happening. I made peanut butter sandwiches for myself, turkey scraps for Riley, and popped an old tape labeled college, "Do not erase" into the VCR. It was one of those cheesy black and white horror flicks. Killer ants or something, giant mandibles and ominous music. I tuned in and out, flipping through a stack of comics and tossing crusts at Riley. By 10, the power flickered. Just a second, like the house blinked. It happens here. The lines are outdated and a squirrel sneeze might knock them out. I grabbed a flashlight, checked outside. Nothing but quiet hills, the trees still as painted leaves. I shrugged and went to rewind the tape. That's when I heard it. 3 gentle thumps spaced perfectly apart. Deliberate. Riley lifted his head, ears pricked. No bark. That stilled me. He always barked. At the wind, the mailman, his own shadow. 3 more taps. Faster this time, same spot, same rhythm. I paused the tape, grabbed the flashlight, and tiptoed down the hallway. The front porch has this plank that creaks if anyone steps on it. No, you try to walk barefoot on it past midnight. But there was nothing. No creak, no shuffle. I peered through the peephole, empty still. I flipped the lock, cracked the door just an inch. The porch light hummed yellow, lighting the steps in that familiar cone. Gravel looked undisturbed, trees were shadows, no footprints, no shapes moving. I stared for a minute, locked the door, whispered to myself about a branch or an animal, and tried to move on. Back in the living room, the tape player was frozen on blue. Riley was in the hallway, staring toward the kitchen. I felt a tight knot in my stomach. Then I heard it again. The back door latch, clicking, just once, metal against metal, cautious, sticky. That latch isn't something loose or windy. It's weighty wood with an old-school hook you have to move. No breeze could do that. I crept into the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife from the block without switching a light on. Knife in hand, I pressed my ear against the door. My breathing felt too loud. Nothing. Bin. Click. Same sound, same intent. I slammed the bolt shut, my teeth tight. My heart pounded so loud I thought it'd crack my ribs. I stood stiff in the hallway, listening. A minute stretched to 5. No footsteps, no chase, just quiet. I sat down on the cold floor, flashlight off, knife resting on my knees. Riley curled up next to me, stiff as a board. I sat like that until around 2 in the morning. My legs went numb, my lungs burned with quiet breaths. It would have been easier to sleep, but my eyelids refused. Then Riley growled low, kind of confused. He tilted his head, staring at the living room window. Our curtains were the cheap kind, thin, bleached, with a little waistband in the middle that never fully seals. Through the tiny slit I saw him, a man, tall, lanky, standing right at the glass. He wasn't crouching or moving. It was as if he wanted me to know he was there. I couldn't make out his face, just that he was still, intense. Then I moved, just shifted, and he slowly turned his head. Not fast, but enough that I felt seen. I don't remember much after that, just the adrenaline, the snap of my legs into gear. I grabbed Riley's leash, clipped it on, and lunged down the hallway. I slammed my bedroom door, locked it, and heaved my dresser in front. Flashlight in one hand, knife in the other, I sank down, back braced against the dresser, breath shallow. I stayed there until the sky pinkened, my whole body shook. The knife blade glinted in the dim light, every blink waking me harder. When morning came, the light looked fake, filtered, staged. I moved the dresser, opened the door slow. Riley padded ahead, alert but quiet, tail low. Every room looked untouched. The tape player was silent and dark. The back door was latched tight. I stepped outside barefoot, feeling gravel under pads, scanning for tracks. Nothing. No footsteps, not even animal prints. My parents rolled in around 10. I spilled it all. What I saw, how I froze, how I slept in 2-hour stretches. Dad laughed, joked that maybe I was dreaming or messing with myself. Mom pulled me close, whispered maybe I'd had too much college night. I should have been angry, but I just felt vulnerable. 2 days later, Mason, the kid down the ridge, told me his uncle heard someone prowling around their place just after midnight that night. The uncle grabbed his shotgun, stepped out, and there was nobody. No prints, no disturbed grass or branches. Just that same eerie stillness. Copper Ridge isn't exactly known for drama. Possums, raccoons, stray ATVs. Maybe that's the worst of it. But after that night, I locked every door, every latch, every window, even if the sun was shining. I never found out who that man was. Didn't catch a glimpse again. I was 27 when I decided to do something a little off-grid. A solo hike way out into the Appalachian backcountry. Not a quick weekend thing either. I mean, deep, unmarked trail, no cell service, fully off the grid for a week. I still have no idea how I came back. I'd done solo hikes before, nothing too hardcore, just a few solo treks in state parks or sections of marked trails. I wasn't reckless about it. I trained, packed right, let people know where I was going. I always had a satellite beacon, extra food, all that. I wasn't out there trying to prove anything. This time, I just wanted real silence. No screaming kids, no hikers blasting music from speakers strapped to their chests like they're working security at a con. I found this route online, buried in one of those weird hiking forums where the interface hasn't been updated since 2003 and everyone types like they're sending telegrams. One guy had posted a map of a loop trail that branched off from the Appalachian Trail near the North Carolina border. Said it was untouched, beautiful, and that he'd only seen one other person during the entire trip. That sounded exactly like what I wanted, so I went for it. The first 3 days were exactly what I hoped for. Peaceful, quiet, completely unplugged. Saw one guy walking his dog on day 2, and a couple on day 3 that looked like they had no idea where they were going, but that was it. I was camping alone, sleeping like a rock in my tent, and for the first time in forever, my brain wasn't buzzing with emails, bills, and work stuff. I just walked, cooked, slept, repeated. Then day 4 started weird. I'd been hiking about an hour when I realized how silent it had gotten. Not like peaceful forest silent, like the sound just dropped out. No birds, no rustling leaves, not even bugs. That kind of silence makes your ears ring. I stopped and stood there for a bit, trying to listen harder, but there was nothing. Just me and the sound of my own breathing. About half a mile later, I saw something. It was this old stone wall, half swallowed by trees and moss. It curved around in this rough U shape, maybe 20 feet wide, with thick stones piled in layers. Clearly built by someone, but it looked ancient. No mortar, no carving, just stacked rock, the kind of thing that makes you go, huh, weird, but not much more. I snapped a photo and crouched down to look closer at the stones. Some of them had deep grooves, like they'd been scratched or worn down. When I stood up and looked at the photo, my stomach flipped. In the frame, behind me, way back between the trees, was a shape. Upright, human-sized. Just standing there. I whipped around. Nothing, just forest. I zoomed in on the photo, trying to convince myself it was a tree or something. But it didn't look like bark or a shadow. It had symmetry. Shoulders, a head. I told myself it was a visual trick. Shadows, pareidolia, whatever. I didn't delete it though. That night, I found a flat patch of ground not far from a creek and set up camp. Just before the sun dropped, I noticed some prints in a muddy spot near my tent. I thought they were mine at first. Maybe I'd looped around. But then I looked closer. These weren't boot prints. They were bare feet. Human. Long, narrow toes. Not deep like mine. Lighter, like someone walking on the balls of their feet. The prints came out of the woods, circled halfway around my tent, and stopped under a tree about 15 feet away. No prints going back. I felt this cold pinch in my chest. Checked all around with my flashlight, made bigger loops out past the site, even climbed the nearest ridge to look around. Nothing, just woods. That night, I barely slept. Every sound, sticks cracking, leaves shifting. I sat up with my knife. I've never been that jumpy in the woods before. It wasn't just nerves. It felt like I wasn't alone. When I woke up the next morning, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. Not just tired. My legs felt like concrete. My back was stiff and I had this dull ache behind my eyes. I shoved down some oatmeal and kept moving. But within an hour, I realized something was off with the trail. I was following the map I'd printed from the forum thread, but things weren't lining up. I was supposed to hit a fork near a broken wooden signpost by 10 a.m. Instead, I hit more woods. Nothing but trees and brush. I backtracked, tried to find the last clear marker. Still nothing. I wasn't panicking yet, but I could feel that low-level buzz starting in my chest. The kind that says something's wrong, but hasn't hit full volume yet. Then I smelled smoke. It was faint, like someone a mile off was cooking over a fire. I figured it had to be another hiker, maybe someone who knew the area better. So I followed it. That's when I found the clearing, not a campsite. Nothing normal about it. At the center was a structure, logs jammed into the dirt in a rough circle, tied together at the top with fraying rope. Hanging from it were bones, tiny ones, like bird legs or something. Feathers, ribbons. There was a circle of ash underneath, the kind of fire that burned days ago and never got cleaned up. I didn't step inside, I backed away, and that's when I saw it. On the ground behind me, dead center on the path, was a small figure made of sticks, about 6 inches tall, twine wrapped around it, pebbles for eyes. It wasn't there 2 minutes earlier. I called out, "Hello? Is someone there?" and tried to sound confident, brave, or whatever. No answer. Nothing moved. Then I felt it, that sensation you get when someone's standing too close. Like if you just turn your head a little, you'll see them breathing next to you. I didn't turn. I just started walking, then jogging. Then I full-on sprinted. I don't know how long I ran. The woods blurred. I tore through a blackberry patch and shredded my arms. Didn't care. Didn't feel it. Just kept going. Then I smelled smoke again, stronger this time. I slowed down, crouched, crept toward it. Another clearing. But this one wasn't abandoned. There were people, 5 or 6 of them, hunched around a low fire. No tents, no packs. Just these hide shelters made from stretched animal skin over wooden frames. Bones hanging from branches. I'm not talking about Halloween decorations, real bones. The people weren't right. Barefoot. Hair like matted straw. Skin smeared with dirt and what looked like ash. Some of them weren't wearing shirts. One of them was swaying side to side, humming something that didn't have a tune. They weren't talking, just sitting, like they'd been there forever. I dropped to the ground behind a log, barely breathing. I didn't move. One of them twitched, then another. The swaying one stopped and tilted his head, like a dog hearing something far off. He didn't look toward me, not directly. I started backing away, inch by inch, and then right behind my ear, a voice whispered, "Found you." I felt the breath on my neck. I turned. There was a face. Hollow eyes, cracked lips, teeth like broken nails. The grin was wrong, not like a person's grin, like something imitating one. I ran. Branches clawed at my face. I swear I heard giggling, high-pitched and twitchy, like static in a laugh. I didn't stop until my legs buckled. When I hit the ground, I crawled until I found the creek. I recognized it. One of the ones that ran roughly parallel to the trail. I followed it, no idea how long. Hours later, I saw the parking lot sign through the trees. I practically dove through the brush, climbed into my truck, slammed the door, locked it, and just sat there with my hands shaking on the wheel. I didn't even start the engine for a few minutes, just listened. Eventually, I drove until I had service. Called my sister, told her I came back early, said the trip didn't go as planned, left it at that. I never reported anything, never posted about it. What would I even say? There are people, Or something like people living out there, barefoot and building twig figures, watching hikers like it's a game. I don't think they're people. My name's Adam. I was 21 when I agreed to dog sit for my uncle at his cabin near Green Hollow, up in the Blue Ridge stretch of the Appalachians. Uncle Mike's place was the last stop before the woods swallowed you. About 1.5 miles up a dirt track, deep gravel, potholes, wildflowers. Until the cabin appeared, simple and wooden, hugging a hill's edge. No cell signal unless you climbed a flat tree stump behind the shed, held your phone just so and whispered sweet nothings to it. No Wi-Fi, no neighbors, nothing but a wood stove that roared to life with logs, battery-powered lanterns dangling like old Christmas lights, and a radio that picked up one loose signal when the wind was in its mood. Then there was Molly. Big, heavy German shepherd who weighed about 90 pounds and acted like she'd cleaned house on boot camp. She knew all her commands in German, bleib, Platz, and the lot. And if you stepped toward the front door with anything less than respect, she'd give you a warning growl like a grumpy old man at the park. Mike told me he was heading to South Carolina for a wedding, would be gone Friday through Monday, and offered $200 to feed the dog and make sure nothing dramatic happened. Easy money, especially since I'd been itching for a quiet reset. The city noise had started to feel like static in my brain, and this seemed perfect. I pulled in Friday evening, right around 5. Mike was loading up his old truck and the air smelled like pine and rain-washed earth. He gave me the tour, where the fake rock hides the spare key, how to pop the fuse box if something trips, and which porch boards liked to shift if you stepped the wrong way. Then came the part that stuck. He paused, looked at me dead serious, and said, "You'll hear weird stuff out here. Don't open the door unless you see headlights. No grin." No joke. I laughed it off, assuming he meant coyotes or drunken ATV drivers. City me isn't used to hills and midnight foxes. No big deal. Molly warmed up instantly. I dumped my duffel in the spare room, slung back downstairs, fed her half the steak Mike left. A solid handshake forging dog-person trust. After that, she didn't bark a single "who's this?" growl. Just kept her unblinking gaze on me like she was deciding whether I'd passed muster. That first night was as quiet as a stone, at least for a while. I played a bit of guitar, nothing too flashy. Stacked logs in the stove, found an old paperback called The Long Trail, and settled in. Around midnight, Molly snapped awake. 1 second she was curled by the stove, the next she popped to alert, ears pricked, nose tracking. Growl low and rigid, not aggressive, but saying, "Something's wrong." I shut the book, turned the fire up a notch, and listened. The cabin back wall creaked. The wind flicked the chimney. But under it all, a voice. Faint, like someone whispering from deep in the woods, a woman's voice. High-pitched, slow, almost bored. Molly barked. A single sharp note, then a lunge toward the front door. I jumped up, hurried, and locked the deadbolt. Outside, a voice closer this time. Just that. One small word in this strange, flat tone. Not scared, not pleading, just quiet. Molly started circling, tail stiff, claws clattering on the floorboards. I turned off the lantern. Everything dropped into black, except the stove's glow. Then, 3 taps on the kitchen wall. Tap, tap, tap. Quick and deliberate, right up against the beam. Molly snapped around, snarling, pacing. I edged to the window, cracked the curtain. Nothing. Just dark trees leaning in, frost lightly dusting the grass. Then silence. No tapping, no voice, no wind. Just nothing. I sat, cold, light still for hours. Every tiny noise made my heart skip. That morning, the sun didn't feel restful. It felt like a spotlight on my terror. I took Molly out for a lap. Frost and broken sticks. Nothing else. I told myself I was hearing things. City stress playing tricks. Probably a drunk on an ATV. misplaced in the night. Saturday night, I was ready. Pulled the shotgun from the corner, loaded it, kept it by my chair. Molly stayed twitchy, ears locking on every distant animal cue. Kept trying to distract her with treats, peanut butter chips, turkey jerky, but she wasn't having it. At 11:32 p.m., Molly tensed at the door. Low growl, no barking, that weird vibrating threatening growl she'd never led with before. Then the voice, "Can I come in?" right outside the door. No rustling, no footsteps, just words. Molly backed away. Not bravado, she slid under the table, tail tucked. That dog who'd launch herself at a bear in a heartbeat was hiding. I pumped the shotgun once, loud thunk, yelled, "Back off!" Nothing. Just the quiet hum of night, plus whatever was out there, breathing slow, steady, almost casual. Then another voice, further down but still clear. "It's cold out here." I inched to the side window. Waited. Blinked into darkness. Heard the breath again, but no hint of light, movement, footprint. I stayed vigil until 3 a.m., then 3 knocks on the back cabin wall. Tap, tap, tap. The cabin rattled slightly. I didn't sleep again. Sunday morning I saw it. Rows of perfect, small, circular indentations in the frost around the back porch. Like someone using a cane, stepping slowly. No heel marks, no shoe treads. Molly wouldn't come near them. She braced her paws and whimpered when I tried. That night I skipped the lanterns. No lights. Just me, Molly under the table, shotgun across my knees. At 1:55 a.m., everything changed. Every window, 5 of them, lit up with white. Figures stepped into frame, 6, maybe 7, pressed right up to the glass. Pale, dark sunken eyes, frozen still. They stared. Molly went ballistic, barking, snarling, trying to break whatever glass she was near. I crouched, shaking. Then came the taps, not one side, not random. Every wall, every pane, tap, pause, routine, intentional. Then voices, all whispering together. "Let us in, Adam." They said my name. I blacked out for a second. When I came to, I was dragging a log from the fire onto the floor, on fire, wrapped in my towel, turning it into a torch. Molly backed me up, still snarling, and those faces did not move, did not blink, did not step back, didn't even seem to breathe. Then they were gone, instantly. Dark windows again. Silence slammed in, louder than their voices. Then the front door handle clicked, slowly turned. Not rattling, smooth, deliberate. I trained the shotgun on it, yelled, "I will shoot." The handle stopped. Not a sound after. I didn't move. Stayed there until faint gray light seeped in. When it finally looked safe, I clipped Molly's leash, snagged my bag, and left with the door wide open. We walked down the dirt track. The woods were quiet. Molly didn't look back once. Uncle Mike pulled up with coffee. I told him everything, down to the taps, the voices, the faces. He didn't blink, just nodded, like I was talking about soggy pancakes. He shrugged and said, "Yeah, they don't like strangers." No explanation, no story, just that. 2 years later, he sold the cabin. The buyers moved in, took only some furniture and leftovers, then vanished, never returned. I haven't gone back to Green Hollow. I don't plan to, but one thing I know for sure, some doors should stay closed. When I took a seasonal job out in southeastern Kentucky, buried in the Appalachian Mountains, I'd just finished my forestry degree and signed up for a 6-week contract with the State Conservation Service. The deal was simple but rough. Maintain trails, inspect old cabins, and collect soil samples. They dropped me in a 1,950s Firewatch cabin with 0 modern comforts. No Wi-Fi, no cell coverage, no plumbing. I got a 2-way radio that sometimes caught the ranger outpost 20 miles away if the weather cooperated. I wasn't intimidated. I grew up camping and loved solo trips in the woods. Quiet, Isolation, it was exactly what I wanted. The cabin was about 3 miles back from the nearest drivable road, tucked behind a collapsed stretch of the old Appalachian Trail. I lugged all my gear up a narrow gully, sweat dripping off me, but it felt good to kick into wild mode. When I finally reached it, the cabin looked just like the photos. Boxy, weathered wood with a single room inside, a wood stove in one corner, a metal cot that clearly hadn't supported anyone in decades, and a jagged shelf full of brittle paper manuals. A rusted metal cabinet was labeled "Maint Log." The door hung crooked, but I didn't bother wrestling with it. The first couple of days passed like clockwork. I hiked loops, marked fallen trees, took soil samples at designated grid points, and radioed in each afternoon with my coordinates. Dinner was whatever I cooked on the little camp stove, usually just some dehydrated meals, and then I'd burn time reading or staring out the lone window as the sun dipped below the pines. The quiet was intense. No traffic, no distant chatter. Even the wildlife felt hushed. It was peaceful, almost too peaceful. On day 3, I realized I had extra daylight. I'd seen an old survey note about a footbridge that collapsed years ago, somewhere past the boundary I was assigned. Curious, I figured I'd go find it. I left without my map because, honestly, I thought I had everything committed to memory. That was my first mistake. I followed a ridge that dropped sharply, and the trail narrowed into thorny underbrush. After an hour, I realized I was lost. I wasn't sure in which direction back might be. Then gravity grabbed me. My foot slipped on moss and I tumbled sideways, sliding a few feet, pounding my shoulder into exposed roots. My knee bruised hard. My flashlight flew out of my pocket. I found it, but orientation was gone. No idea which way the sun went down. Trees blocked the sky. I stopped and tried to pick up a sound, anything, but the forest was completely dead silent. No wind, no rustle of leaves, no bird calls, just a void. Then came a dry creak, like old wood under pressure. That's when I saw it. A clothesline stretched between 2 blackened trees. 3 items hung motionless: a brown coat, stiff and rotten, a ripped red flannel shirt, and part of a denim pant leg that stopped at a ragged seam. No breeze, no movement, just those filthy clothes, perfectly still. Something about that setup made my skin crawl. I hit the flashlight switch off just to feel the absence of light. Pitch black, no detail visible. I hit it back on, and it was gone. No rope between those trees, no clothes, just empty space and my own footprints in the pine needles. I spun around and pointed the light wildly, but nothing was there. That was when a crack sounded behind me. Not a twig snapping underfoot, something different, something deliberate. I spun around again. Nothing, but I could feel eyes on me. My senses went sharp. Every hair on my neck prickled. About 10 minutes later, stumbling down an unseen path, I came across a cabin. This one wasn't in my map. No record anywhere. It was dark wood, drenched and slick from age. One shutter hung askew and the rest looked about to fall off. The door was shut tight. Fresh, oversized boot prints led right up to the porch. I said, "Hello?" My voice sounded small. No reply. I edged to a window. No glass, just a square hole framed by dirty curtains. I shone my flashlight inside. Symbols, maybe letters, were burnt into the wood, twisting lines like snakes or tangled roots. Ritualistic, but in a way I couldn't decode. That's when I saw 2 eyes. Human-sized, low to the ground. They didn't glow or move. They were just watching, still. My legs tensed. I backed away slowly. Didn't run yet, just moved. I turned, hoping to trace my steps home, but the trees pressed in around me. I flicked the flashlight off, heard nothing. Darkness swallowed me. When I turned it back on, I pushed on. Footsteps started then, soft, intentional steps. I stopped. Footsteps stopped. I moved again. Footsteps resumed a beat behind me. My chest hammered. I tried the radio, just static, no recognizable trail. I followed a small gully and climbed another ridge until I glimpsed a glint ahead. A metal trail marker. Hand-painted numbers, none that matched my region. I followed it like a lifeline. That's when the footsteps changed. They circled me, left, then right, then above, in the trees. A branch snapped overhead like something large just shifted. My voice trembled, though I didn't realize it. I swore aloud. It's just a forest. You're just tired. But I wasn't alone. I crossed a shallow stream, hopping over slick rocks. Water splashed. I spun my beam to catch anything in its glow. Nothing but rippling stones. That quiet was shattered soon after. 3 sharp clicks, like a tongue against teeth. Then a pause, then 3 more. The pace mirrored my steps, sometimes matching, always close. I ran, sprinting downhill, lungs burning, knees stabbing in pain. Branches whipped across my shirt. My flashlight threatened to die. Flicker, flicker, then steady. Then I saw it, the conservation emblem nailed to a tree. My marker. I recognized it. Only a few hundred yards remained to the cabin. I threw my bulk forward, hurdled the undergrowth, tore a sleeve, didn't care. I hit the door, slammed it shut behind me, shoved the cot against it and dropped the radio. I pressed my back to the wall, gripping that radio, breathing like I'd run a mile though I'd only gone maybe half. Outside, the wind stirred leaves once, then everything went silent. I didn't sleep. I sat there, facing the door, too wired to blink. Eventually, dawn broke. Weak, pale light through the cracked wood. I stepped out to check. The forest looked normal, almost welcoming under the sun. But I could still feel eyes on me. I spent the next several days trying to find that strange cabin again, but mapping and sat imagery lit up nothing. It was like it never existed. I didn't renew the contract. I went straight home when it ended. I haven't gone back. I took a solo camping trip into the Appalachians. My girlfriend had broken up with me a week before. Nothing dramatic, she just said I felt emotionally flat, like a tire that's been sitting unused too long. I didn't argue, I didn't beg, I just packed a bag and pulled a random trail in western North Carolina. I needed space, fresh air, a chance to clear my head, or at least escape the same old loop of thoughts. I wasn't going all out wild, no hammock over a river or hauling 10 days of food. Just the basics, a cheap tent, my beat-up headlamp, map, little folding knife, water filter, and freeze-dried meals. I wanted simple so I could think, or maybe not think at all. I told myself I'd hike 2 or 3 days, come back battered, sunburnt, and with a clearer head. That was the plan. I reached the trailhead around noon. There was one other car parked there, half buried in mud and leaves like it had been abandoned, forgotten. I didn't read into it. Threw my license plate to my brother via text just in case, then hoisted my pack and set off. The trail steepened fast. Roots twisted across the path, moss-covered rocks shifting underfoot, and every uphill stretch felt like my legs were tightening into knots. Not a soul around. No birds, no chipmunks, not even a single bug buzzing by. Just the crunch of my boots on old leaves and my breathing, heavy and uneven. Around 4 miles in, I found a small stream winding through a flat spot surrounded by tall pines. Clean water, easy to filter. Enough room to pitch a tent without rustling tree roots. It felt perfect for night 1. I set up camp, boiled water, and ate chili out of a pouch. It wasn't gourmet, but it hit the spot. My phone had already died hours ago while hunting for signal, so after that solo pouch of chili, I crawled into my sleeping bag and turned off the world. Somewhere past midnight, I jerked awake. The night was silent, but I felt awake, like something nudged me before I even heard it. Then, crunch. Just one footstep on dry leaves, not close, not distant, somewhere in between. Then silence and another crunch. Slow, deliberate. My heart did a little somersault. I didn't move. My knife was in that side pouch. I slid a hand over it and gripped the handle. locked into listening. Nothing. I stayed still, holding the knife, listening to the empty forest. It felt like hours passed. Eventually, I convinced myself it was wildlife. Deer, or a bear crushing leaves as it passed. I didn't quite believe it, but it let me drift back into sleep, still holding that knife. Morning came too early. I didn't bother boiling water or eating, just packed up in silence. I walked uphill for hours, waking my muscles, trying to chase the fear out of my head. The slope felt endless. Around noon, I stumbled on something that shoved all the calm to the back of my mind. A deer lay dead. Fresh, its stomach ripped open wide, ribs splayed. But there was no blood, not a trace. The fur around the gash was unnaturally white, like someone had cleaned it off. My first instinct was horror. My second was to step back. I didn't have a gun. My phone was useless. Turning around meant retracing every step past that thing. So I pushed forward, faster, head down. By late afternoon, I found a rock overhang big enough to pitch a tent. I set down my bag and took a moment to breathe. Or at least, I tried. And that's when I saw it. Stone piles, 12 of them, arranged in a perfect circle around the campsite. Each stack about 3 or 4 fist-sized rocks tall. Not random, precise. I took a slow lap around them, counting 1, 2, 3, 12. Then I nudged one with my foot. It tumbled. Nothing happened. No flash of light, no growl, no rustle. I waited, town clock ticking in my head. Still nothing. I shrugged, set up my tent and tried to eat, but I couldn't. Tension stuck in my chest. I didn't sleep that night. A bit past 1 a.m., I heard it again. A step. Then another. Not an animal, moving with purpose. Footsteps drifting around my tent, stomping each stone pile one at a time. Not tossing them, stepping deliberately, crushing them. I could feel it circling me. It had weight. Then total silence. I lay frozen until the sky began to lighten. Dawn felt like a promise. When I finally unzipped the tent, all 12 piles were gone. Not knocked over, as if no one had ever put them there. The ground was clean. No errant rocks, no footprints. Nothing. It made no sense. I packed in under 5 minutes and got the hell out. No food, no water, just walking. But the trail seemed to shift. Ridges didn't match my map. Forks weren't where they were supposed to be. I kept double-checking, but the map made no sense. My confidence was unraveling. Around midday, I stumbled across a tree with something nailed to it. I stopped cold. Hung there was a bundle of small bones. Animal, I think. Tied together with something that looked like hair. Human hair. Beneath it, carved fresh into the bark, a triangle enclosing a spiral. Crisp lines, raw sap still bleeding out. Everything in me screamed to run. I sprinted downhill, screaming in my mind but silent out loud. Branches whipped at my arms and face. I didn't care. I didn't even think. I just ran until I tripped over a root and slammed into the forest floor. My shoulder hit hard. Something popped, booming in the quiet. My pack took the brunt, but pain exploded through my body. I stumbled, shaking, and found a ditch to hide in. Pulled my rain fly and crawled under it, hugging my knife. I didn't light a fire, didn't eat, just wrapped in the rain fly, chest heaving, knife pressed to my heart like a shield. That night, it got worse. Voices came, whispers, fast, overlapping, layered on top of one another. I couldn't make out words, just a wave of sound crashing around me. Then the chant. Steady, internal rhythm, syllables repeated, over and over. A heartbeat in the dark. Then all went quiet, and this one voice, right above me, says calmly, "You saw too much." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Eyes tight shut. Everything felt like it stopped. Then, nothing. The forest was quiet again. At first light, I climbed out and started walking. No map, no trail, just following whatever I thought was east until I found something solid. A road. Asphalt. I flagged down a ranger a few miles later. He asked if I was hurt. I said I slipped, got lost. I didn't mention deer, stones, voices. 2 weeks later, curiosity got me. I looked up that triangle spiral symbol. What I found shocked me. It's ancient, older than the mountains themselves. In Appalachian folklore, it's tied to what some call the Hollow Watchers. They're not creatures or ghosts. They're guardians. They don't live in the woods. They keep them, guard them. From what or whom you can't say. I've never gone back, and I don't ever intend to. My name's Maddie. I was 17 when Mom and I up and left town for Elridge Grove. Population? 700 and a handful. It had one diner, a post office no bigger than a closet, and a hardware store that shut down well before sunset. The cop doubled as the dog catcher. We moved into an old farmhouse at the gravel road's dead end. Mom inherited it from a cousin she barely remembered. The place looked done, paint peeling, porch leaning like it's about to sigh, the front steps creaking whenever you took one. Falling asleep that first night, I thought, we're going to bail on this place soon. Across the road lived this guy, Walter Dent. I guessed mid-60s, just skin and bones. He rarely moved when he was standing, like he didn't want to put up the effort. His house looked forgotten. Curtains shredded, 2 plastic deer in the yard that stared toward our house like icy sentinels. He introduced himself the moment we pulled the U-Haul in, elbows resting on his porch railing, voice so low it was half a whisper. If you hear knocking late at night, don't answer. Kids around here mess around. He barely looked at us. He didn't even offer to help carry boxes. I forced a laugh. Mom insisted, he's just old country. But something about his tone lingered in my bones. Night 3, 2:13 a.m. sharp. I was halfway through a snack when I heard it. A faint scrape across the floor, then 3 slow knocks. I froze mid-bite. That sound, like someone tapping in a calm, deliberate pattern. My eyes locked on the bedroom door wide, and I stayed perfectly still until morning. I told Mom. She shrugged and called it wood settling. The townspeople called our house just old. Never admitted it did other things. I decided to test it. That night, I sat on the couch, blanket around me, phone's mic recording. At 2:11, there were footsteps on the porch, something brushing along the railing. And at 2:13, 3 knocks again, steady like a heartbeat. I stood and peered out the window. There was Walter. Hands in pockets, face blank, staring at our door. I couldn't hold back. What are you doing? He didn't flinch or blink. He walked away without a word. I rode my bike to the diner the next morning, still shook up. In there, the cook, Lena, stopped mid-wrench on a milkshake machine when I asked about Walter. His nephew went missing, Marvin Dent. He fell into a dry well near the creek 30 years ago. Never dug him a proper grave, just buried him back there. She nodded toward Walter's place. They say Marvin's bones are still out back. I caught my breath. My stomach flipped into knots. Walking home, bleary-eyed, I saw Walter on his porch holding a small wooden box, arms shaking like it weighed more than he did. He turned his distance-glazed gaze my way and said, "You shouldn't be out after dark. Some things remember noise." Then he shut his window. That night, I double-checked every window, locked everything tight, and cranked up the heater to keep the place from feeling too chill. At exactly 2:14, 3 taps on my bedroom window, sharp, fast. I froze, mid-crawl out of bed. I parted the curtains and saw a figure at the yard's edge, broader than a person, but bending fast, low. It wasn't human. Then it disappeared into the dark. Morning light revealed muddy footprints pressed into the flower bed. No shoes, long toes, heavy heel marks. I showed Mom. She went pale, locked her bedroom door for the first time. After that, the sounds multiplied. Knocks on the front door, the window, the attic hatch, a back door Mom never used, always the same 3 taps. Quiet, stubborn, like a ticking clock that forgets to stop. So I started making salt lines along every threshold. Cheap table salt, the kind you shake on fries. Just a thin line across the sill. Mom rolled her eyes, but didn't argue. Then I saw Walter digging at 1:45 a.m. I was staring out my window, too wired to sleep. He stood in our yard, shovel in hand, dirt flying. He dug about a foot, then reached down and pulled something from the hole. A long bundle wrapped tight in cloth. He slid it under his coat and strolled back across the road, calm as rain. I called the cop. Officer Spence showed up, poked around, rang Walter's doorbell. Walter cracked the door, said, "Evening, officer, nothing more." Spence left 5 minutes later, said, "Sleep easy, probably just yard work." I wanted to argue, like yard work at 2 a.m., but I didn't. That night, Mom burst into my room, face drained. It knocked. From the inside. On the bathroom mirror, she said, it like her throat hurt swallowing the words. I didn't have a response. I told myself we'd leave. I started packing small stuff, chargers, clothes, photo albums, just in case. By the next night, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat in the hall with a baseball bat across my lap. At 2:16, I heard the attic creak. The ladder had dropped itself down. The hatch gaped open. My heart hammered so loud I thought the whole house would hear. I shoved the ladder closed, wedged a chair under it, and sat there until dawn. At sunrise, I saw Walter's porch light blinking 3 times. On, off, on again. Like Morse code, warning. That evening I marched over to his house. Thumped on the door until he answered. He looked the same. Hair thin, eyes pale. I couldn't hold it back. "You're doing this. You're behind it." My voice cracked. He stared and whispered, "It followed me back from the creek. You opened the window, didn't you?" I hadn't, but I locked, nailed, and boarded every window after that. We were sealing ourselves in, and still, the knocking didn't stop. Behind the fridge, inside the dryer, the hallway mirror cracked overnight, spiderwebbed from the center. Mom started sleeping in my bed. Said next weekend we're gone. I believed her. Then came Friday. I went to the bus stop after school. Came back to an open front door. Smashed lock. The house was empty. Quiet. Too quiet. No Mom, no batters or salt lines, just dust settling. Upstairs, I found her near the attic hatch, leaning hard against the wall. She was staring at the ceiling, mouth open. Like she was seeing something I couldn't. Her eyes were dull, empty. I shook her. Nothing. Like she'd been sliding out. That was the final straw. 3 hours later, we drove away. No plan, just packed up everything we could. Left the salt in lines, the smashed mirror, even the bat. Later, I asked Officer Spence what he found. He called it a break-in. He said Walter's house was boarded up tight. Just 2 plastic deer, facing into the woods now. We're living in Raleigh. Mom sleeps with the lamp on,